What's up guys, Rash here, and I think it's about time you finally realize just how strong Subaru from ReZero is. He can easily defeat some of Marvel's finest. His powers and abilities are some of the best in isekai, giving him abilities that can kill any opponent instantly. Even if you can regenerate, even if you are 10 times, no, 100 times stronger than he ever could be, he has what it takes to defeat the strongest characters in fiction. Starting with the basics, we're going to talk about his weapon. This weapon would give him extreme speed. The only thing I could really compare him to is a Belmont from Castlevania, because he'd be able to kill superhumans with just his whip alone. Thanks to his cunning, his genius, and his trickery, he would literally be a character pulled from Castlevania. His whip would be a lot longer than any ordinary whip, making it 12 feet long. Maybe even just a little bit longer. I can guarantee you this, he's giving Indiana Jones a run for his money because after all, he's able to take down superhumans with this whip. Whenever he attacks, it would be described to be too fast to track with the naked eye. With a single snap from his whip, it would be able to rip through the air close to the speed of sound, which is pretty incredible. And his accuracy with his attacks would be no different. He could easily wrap this whip around an opponent's leg and trip them, causing them to fall onto the ground. But no, his accuracy would be even better. He can easily wrap this whip around an opponent's neck from 12 feet away, letting him strangle them in just a split second. Guilty Whip's speed would be the best thing about it. Even though it lacks a lot of power, he would still find ways to make it so that he can hurt his opponents in the worst ways possible. Getting hit in the face by his weapon would make it so that your entire head would twist, just from the force of his attacks alone. More often than not, Subaru's gonna peel the skin back of his opponents and rent their flesh, only to leave deep and painful scars right behind it. Even so, if he can't muster enough strength to hurt his opponents off of his arm force alone, he has enough skill to hit rubble off of the ground, making it redirect and then hit an opponent in the head. From hitting this rubble, he would be able to cave in a person's head without aiming for their head directly. The best part about Subaru's fighting style is that he's always going to use the environment to his advantage. And it wouldn't just be in combat, he would also use this as a traversal option, letting him swing from different parts of buildings, making it so that Subaru can take advantage of his parkour skills. Like I said, he could give Indiana a run for his money, because after all, Subaru can use magic, with his most reliable spell being Shamak. Shamak is a giant smoke screen that is able to cut off anyone's 5 senses, leaving them completely vulnerable to getting killed. Now, if this isn't one of the best options a person could use, I wouldn't know what is. Surprisingly so, Subaru is actually very bad at using magic, so his Shamak wouldn't really work on anyone that has a higher skill ceiling than him. A great example of this would be Subaru's battle against Julius, with him easily swiping away Subaru's Shamak spell. Which would make you ask, just what exactly is Subaru gonna do when his spell is so weak? You see, after forming a pact with his spirit Beatrice, he would finally be able to use the greatest form of Shamak there ever was, Al-Shamak. And by using this, it would not only turn off all the senses of an opponent, but it would send them into another dimension. And this would happen in an instant. If you want to argue that this spell isn't instantaneous, even so, the very fact that whatever gets hit by this would lose all of its sense of feeling and direction, a person or being would still be teleported into another dimension because they wouldn't even be aware that that is happening to them. And this is all thanks to the properties of the spell itself. Al-Shamak would be so powerful that regeneration and propagation would lose all meaning. So if you have someone like Wolverine, who is pretty much invincible fighting Subaru, if he were to use Al-Shamak on him, he could send him into a dimension that might just actually kill him. Who really knows? I'm gonna let you guys use your imaginations here. But he can definitely send him to another dimension. But this has a huge weakness. The biggest setback here is the very fact that Beatrice would only be able to use a spell this strong due to storing so much mana over time. She would have drained mana from everyone inside of Roswell's mansion for 4 centuries. Now, this really makes you understand just how useless Subaru really is. He has so little mana that it would take all of Subaru's magic power just to summon her every single day. And to make matters worse, his spirit Beatrice has no magic of her own. So she solely has to rely on Subaru's small mana output. Now she's really good at making the most out of what little mana that she has, which does let her use pretty powerful spells that I'm gonna mention later in the video. For the most part, if Subaru does fight somebody, he can either use the mana that is inside of the manor, or Beatrice can use mana crystals as ammunition, and as a last resort, she can finally use Subaru's mana pool to pull mana from. With that being said, she would still be so good at tuning magic that regardless of having a small amount, she can make it possible to continue to perform low-level spells like it's nothing. And she's even capable of using high-level spells when using the mana from the mansion and from the mana crystals. So they can actually fight at a pretty decent level, when Subaru almost has little to no mana. I can't lie, it sounds impossible for them to fight anyone, but they make it work. That's just the beauty of it all. Kudos to ReZero's author. Anyway, his best offensive spell would be Minya. This uncanny use of shadow magic lets Beatrice fire a giant wave of mana arrows that instantly kill an opponent. It's as simple as you touch it, you die. Coming into contact with one of these arrows would crystallize your body instantaneously, making one of your limbs explode. Now imagine 40 of these being fired at you at one single time. Unless you're Neo from the Matrix, and I doubt he's gonna survive any of these shards flying at him, you're as good as dead. Especially when we want to look at the facts. These arrows can be fired and would lock on to an opponent instantly, so a headshot is a sure thing. You're not surviving getting hit in the head by one of these arrows. You cannot block any of these arrows at all. You have to dodge them. So good luck with that. The accuracy of these arrows would be so deadly that they would be able to take down an army of rabbits like it's nothing. Can you imagine headshotting 100 rabbits at one time? I can't either. But these arrows can do just that. This spell would even go above and beyond just being a collection of arrows. When using Old Minya, this attack would change the entire atmosphere. This spell would be described as a massive light of destruction. I imagine it being like a satellite shooting a giant laser. The impact of this spell would make the entire ground itself flip and leave a cloud of dust in its wake. Beatrice would also play a hand in gravity magic. With her spell Murok, she can make it so that all of her opponents will fly in the air, and guess what? The same can be applied to Subaru. He would be able to defy gravity, and this would allow him to dodge almost impossible to dodge attacks, with her controlling gravity and moving him out of the way. It would only get better because this can also play a role in Subaru using his parkour ability that he gets later on in the story. With Murok, he would be able to jump up an entire yard in the air with a light hop, thanks to the good old-fashioned gravity manipulation. The craftiness of this ability would get even better because not only does Murok allow for gravity manipulation, but you can also erase your entire presence for perfect stealth kill opportunities. Now, with the ability to send someone flying in the air, with a simple chant, this allows Beatrice to leave a clear opening for Subaru to kill any of his opponents, let alone allow her to shoot one of her Minyas into their neck, giving Subaru an easy win. There's a lot of potential in Subaru's fighting style with Beatrice at his side, and I think that there's no secret when it comes to that. Now hold on to your seats because we've only been talking about his mobility options and how he can hurt someone. It only gets stronger because his defensive options are just some of the best I've seen. Don't get me wrong, they're still pretty bad thanks to how horrible he is, but this would be as useful as an iframe roll in the Souls series. And I know some of you may be tired of hearing about Souls, but I could not use a better comparison. Listen up. This is amazing because Subaru, unlike a Souls character, does not have to roll. He has invincibility frames, and this would be thanks to the spell M or EMM. It would be an invisible magical field that would cover his entire body. So yes, he has an invincibility frame to abuse in a fight. This field that covers his entire body prevents anything from interacting with him. This ability would be so reliable, so clutch, that when going up against Regulus, who is a guy who can cut off a person's hand with the wave of a finger and turn anyone into a corpse in a matter of seconds, thanks to this ability, it would do nothing to Subaru. It would leave him completely unscathed. No matter how strong an attack is, it could practically be world-ending in terms of how much power it has. It would never, ever interact with Subaru at all. But there are some weaknesses to this because he has to stand still. Now that may sound like trash to some of you, but Subaru can turn a fight into an annoying match of red light, green light. He can run towards you, and the minute he can predict when you're about to attack, he can just stand there and you would never even damage him. He can do this and get close enough to a point where he's satisfied and feels like he can kill you. And he can do this until he runs out of all of his magic. Of course, he has little to no magic, but once again, he does have the possibility of pulling magic from the mansion or carrying mana crystals on his body. So this doesn't really seem like it would be a problem. And his defense gets more reliable than just that. He can use EMT, which is different from EMM, because rather than stopping and becoming invincible towards any and every attack, EMT can only negate magic attacks. However, he is able to move when he does this, and it has an increased range. Rather than covering his entire body, he can create a giant force field that extends to 10 meters. And anyone inside of this field will also no longer experience any damage from magic. So any magic that comes into contact with this field will never ever reach him. If Subaru fights anyone using magic, and he has a group of people inside of this field, magic will be pointless against him because he will be able to fight while retaining this entire shield. However, it only stays up if he continues to have mana. When he runs out of mana, the shield itself will disappear. The only way to really fight Subaru when he's using EMT is to fight him with physical attacks. However, you'd have to be aware of the power itself stopping magic. So unless you're running those ones, you're not doing anything to him. And that's if he even lets you have the chance of hitting him. If this useless character seems unbeatable now, you don't know what you're missing when it comes to Subaru using the authorities. For starters, he would pull a page out of Elfenlied's book. With the authority of Sloth, he would be able to have an invisible hand that no one would ever be able to perceive, control it, and use its power to take on every opponent and kill them with ease. This would be known as Invisible Providence. With 100 different invisible hands that can come from every single direction, Subaru can easily have someone's life in his hands, literally, and tear them to pieces without having to think about it. Unfortunately, our main character here does still kinda suck. So he can't use 100 hands at once, and nor does he have an insane amount of reach with such power. But I promise you, it's still a pretty good ability, despite Subaru barely scratching the potential of its true power. Even when using an incomplete authority, he would be able to throw a punch way more powerful than he would ever have been capable of. And this is if someone is actually really close to him. But he can still take advantage of someone in a different way. He can use this hand that can't ever be perceived and easily crush a person's heart if they get close enough to him. This gives Subaru an opportunity to insta-kill someone, yet it comes at a price. It would take a high level of concentration for him to be able to do this, and this would twist his organs after doing so, which would cause Subaru pain. But I would say that's a pretty small price to pay to kill someone. Anyway, I rest my case with how strong his authority of sloth is. Truth be told, he would also have the authority of greed. After killing Regulus, he would have the ability to take on other people's pain, injuries, and fatigue. Obviously, to make any real use of this authority, Subaru would have to fight with a team at his side. He would even have the ability to change and manipulate his own mental burdens and pain and give them to other people. He would only be able to do this to a person if they see him as an ally and have a bond with him. Now, you normally wouldn't think that he would be able to use this in a 1v1. However, as an apostle of greed, he would have a small army. He would have an entire collection of Ryuzus that would fight for him, no questions asked. They have to do whatever he wants and bend to his will, all because he's an apostle. So he can give his burdens to them and take on their burdens if he needs to. The best thing about these Ryuzu clones wouldn't be their innate magic ability or anything like that, because they do not possess such power. It would be the fact that they're bombs from a bomb factory. As you can see here, Garfield is able to use these Ryuzu clones as self-sacrificial pawns so that he can damage an opponent. To be fair, outside of being bombs, I don't see much use for them. However, they make for a great distraction, and they're another source of damage for our main character here. Honestly, a lot of these abilities can't compare to his best and most well-known ability, Return by Death. So anyone that were to fight Subaru would have to deal with him respawning every time he dies. As far as bootleg immortality goes, this is one of the most broken. He can easily recollect every single thing that had happened to him, and he would understand how to dissect and avoid any and every situation that causes him to die. So if he were to fight someone, he will gain enough experience against them and then adapt to everything they do until he has one final possibility of winning. I don't know about you guys, although he's so weak, having an infinite amount of respawns lets him wipe the floor with a lot of people, unless he's just going to be trapped in a vicious cycle of dying over and over again. That is without a doubt the worst thing that could happen to him. Good luck winning a 1v1 because you're going to be fighting him forever. It's safe to say that Isekai's most useless character has what it takes to become one of Isekai's strongest. Being a normal human in a fantasy world and not being able to use the full potential of their power system known as mana. Because he would have little to no mana, yet Subaru has so many different cheat sheets that allow him to continue to survive and win, not only in the world of ReZero, but in countless fights alone. With an instant kill move that sends people into a dimension where who knows what happens to them, a spell that can turn off someone's 5 senses, practically making them experience death, and an array of mana arrows that can insta-kill a person just by making contact with them, Subaru can win a lot of fights easily with just those 3 things. But again, he's so much more powerful than you think because, like I mentioned before, he has invincibility frames. It seems like none of this would really matter because he has low magic, but like I mentioned before, he has mana shards and the supply of mana that he can take from the mansion. He can cheat a fight with utter ease because by standing in one place, he can be invincible for so long. When using the supply of mana and mana shards that he can fall back on, he can literally stand there and be an invincible, unmovable object that will never take damage, and anyone not knowing this that would try to attack him, he can easily predict their next move and crush their heart with his authority of sloth, even when he's not good at using it. I'm not even going to mention a person that can use magic against him because his magic negation field is just going to stop anything that they can do, which will force them into a fist fight with him, and he can easily crush their heart if they get close enough then, because he will force them into a fist fight. He has so many different plans to approach a situation that the possibilities for him to win are actually endless. Not only this, He will always know what an opponent is doing because he's going to recognize their attack patterns and thought patterns with his deductive ability. And on top of this, he will get killed over and over again until he finally finds a way to win. At the bare minimum, he has his whip that can attack superhumans and match them in speed. Subaru can cheat his way into a win against some of the strongest in anime, and there's nothing you can say about it. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Make sure to check out these 2 videos on your screen right now. You're definitely going to enjoy them if you liked this one.